everyone who's joining the call right now. That's what I've just done is I've just chatted over to everybody the link to complete the profile that I'm about to show you on the ChangeGrid. We will be talking about this profile for the next 11 weeks because there's 12 activities on it. I like to focus on one activity a week. During these calls, I'm going to be giving you guys a little bit of insight into what your ChangeGrids are saying if you'd like to volunteer to do that. But the results I would be showing in a group profile situation would always be anonymous. So let me go ahead and take a look at the grid I want to show you guys. Just a second. All activities. We're going to look at Linda's only. So view the ChangeGrid, and I'll slide it in here for you guys can all see this. Let me kind of zoom in on it as well so we can make it as big as I can for you. All right, for those who aren't familiar with it, what you're looking at is called a ChangeGrid. The ChangeGrid is the tool that I created many moons ago. And basically it's a tool that reveals the level of productive tension that someone's experiencing at a particular given moment in time about a particular activity. Well, when you guys filled out the ChangeGrid, I was actually asking you about 12 different activities. So let me go ahead. I'm going to do something here to save us a little bit of looking. Let me just take a screenshot right here of what these activities are. And then what I'll do is I will slide it onto our, oops, sorry, just a second, double click. I'll slide it in so we could be looking at these side by side rather than scrolling up and down to try to see what activity was what. I'll put the activity list off to the right. Depending on what kind of a screen you guys are looking at right now, you might still be able to see the activity list, but if I'm going to refer to it, I'll slide it in place so you can have a better idea about what's really going on. So the activities I asked you guys to take a look at were these 12. We went over them on our last call, which is now up on our YouTube channel. And so these were things like hearing my authentic voice, living my authentic truth, eliminating barriers to living my life more authentically, living a life that feels right. You know, you see a variety of these activities. Now, each one of those activities becomes a subject that we can explore on the ChangeGrid. And so let me slide this out of the way for just a second. So again, I can explain what you're looking at. So this diagram again is the ChangeGrid. The ChangeGrid reveals the answers to 4 questions about these activities. Those 4 questions are: how engaged are you in doing, or rather, how ready are you to perform that activity? How engaged are you in performing it? How likely are you to follow through and actually do it? And what type and level of support are you going to need in order to get you on track and keep you on track? So when it comes to things like if you really are wanting to work on living a more authentic life, having more authentic relationships, understanding and living your core values and beliefs, there's work to be done. There's assessments to be done. There's thoughts to be had. And so the ChangeGrid gives you an opportunity to see reflected back to you what your perceptions are about that activity. So think of the ChangeGrid as being a mirror that's reflecting to you how you're currently dealing with this set of activities. You can use that as a tool for self-coaching, which is why we call it the Oracle of the Self. This is really you talking to you about you. And the ChangeGrid gives you an opportunity to see what those conversations actually look like. And so each one of these numbered activities has a corresponding spot on the ChangeGrid that Linda's perceptions have placed it at. So said Linda, here's 4 questions. When it comes to hearing your authentic voice, how do you rate your ability to do that? How challenging do you find that? How big of a task does that feel like it is? How important is it to you? Is this something that really matters to you in the big scheme of things? Based on your answers to the 4 questions you were asked about each one of these activities, the ChangeGrid has now taken shape. And so you will see scattered around the ChangeGrid 12 spots. Each one of those spots has a number in the center of it, and that number corresponds to the activity that we're looking at. Now you will notice that the number, if you will, is plotting at a different spot on the change grid. Different activities plotted different places. Well, what's that mean? How did it get there? Well, in this particular case, we'll look at activity number 1, hearing my authentic voice. And I can tell you that Linda rated her ability to do that as a 4. So can she do that? She thinks the answer is somewhat. So on the scale of 0 being low and 12 being high, 4 is not very high. And so she would have a low to moderate level of ability to do that in her perceptions of things. She perceives the challenge of doing it as being a 10. All right, that's 2.5 times her ability. And that's why you see her plotting here at the intersection of ability for 4 and challenge for 10. Now, I did ask 2 other questions. How big of a task do you think it is? Well, that size rating is depicted as the circle and the color that the circle takes. And so Linda considers it to be, it's orange there, which would be a moderate size kind of an activity for her. If it had been large activity, it would be red. And if it's a small activity in the big scheme of things, it would be green. And as a reminder from our last conversation, size is really a reflection of how many resources you feel something is consuming. So if it's going to take you a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money and a lot of whatever else is involved, it's going to feel big because it's consuming stuff. It's big. And if it's not going to take very much time, energy, or money, or whatever, then you're going to, it's a pretty small activity. It's a small task to be done. You'll also notice that the number of the activity itself has its own color. And that color reflects the importance rating that you gave it. So if the number, you see the number sign, is red, you considered the activity to be high on the importance scale. And that's the case for Linda. She rated it very high. That's why it's red, but it's not a very big activity, moderately sized. There it is inside of an orange edged circle, and she's plotting here where she's on the change grid. Well, I'm not going to drag you through all of them, but that same process was repeated for every one of these 12 activities. Now, keep in mind that the change grid is not a personality test. And so while I can certainly tell you a great deal about how Linda is thinking about these particular activities, and if I looked at your change grid, I'd be able to tell you the same sort of things. I can't generalize this to her behavior. Maybe if I was fortunate enough to see her do change grid after change grid after change grid, I would start seeing patterns form that would resonate with certain personality typing systems that are out there. But nevertheless, that's not what this is for. The change grid is just reflecting back to you how you happen to be feeling about these particular activities at the moment in time that you completed the change grid. We can also use this as a tool for monitoring progress. And so as you work your way through the Oracle of the Self, and as you become more and more skilled at managing your level of productive tension, we would encourage you to take this change grid, the same activity list all over again, to see if you have moved to healthier, more beneficial areas of the change grid. And again, as a reminder, remember that the most important activity list is not the one that we give you to fill out on the change grid, or the one that you see, on the screen or whatever. The most important change grid is the one that's in your head. The change grid that's in your head has an activity list that's populated with everything you're currently doing or thinking about, tasks, goals, relationships, different situations you might be looking at. You already have a change grid in your head, and you've always had one. And on that change grid are all of the things that are happening in your life simultaneously. And although we're not looking at that today, there you are with a change grid reflecting back to you what's really going on, how you are talking to you about you. And that's the whole Oracle concept.
Is there an ideal spot for these?
There is an ideal spot for each one of these activities, and it's different for different activities. So when we start looking at the composite change grids, that's the change grid where instead of looking at how one person answered all activities, I'd be looking at one activity and tell you how the population has filled it out. And I'm happy to do that before we're done today. This particular activity, hearing my authentic voice, we're just going to say for now, it needs to be over here on the change grid. And I'm not going to describe what over here is because that's what we're about to take a look at as we do a reading for Linda. But so to the reading, Linda, what your change grid is basically saying is some pretty powerful messages. The first is that I want you to notice that you've plotted things very vertically on the change grid. While there is an outlier far to the right and one far to the left, the majority of your activities are actually plotting in a vertical line or darn
Yep.
close to that vertical line. What the vertical plotting indicates is that you have a very practical and pragmatic way of looking at things and looking at these particular activities. But there are some that the kind of took you out of that mode, and you have a little bit of a different set of feelings around it. But I know this going into it. Whenever you're confronted with a situation, and all these are situations, where you perceive your ability as not being as great as you would like it to be, keep in mind for all of these circles that you're looking at, to land there, Linda had to rate her ability between 3 and say a 6. So if the middle is as moderate as you're going to get, she's plotting on the low end of moderate. On that. So a high end of low to the low end of moderate, and that's where she's plotting. So she's not professing to have any kind of high level of ability to do these particular activities. And so again, like number 12, living a life that feels right, or number 5, validating that the values and beliefs I hold are truly mine. Number 6, living my core values. Number 10, maintaining open and honest relationships with others. Number 4, way over here, in fact, taking inventory of the values and beliefs I currently project. Linda is saying in the change grid that these are things that she still sees herself as having room to learn more, really be able to do this. Linda, you're welcome to unmute yourself and chime in anytime you'd like. It's your reading, so feel free to do that. And several of you volunteered, so once I'm finished with a little bit of insights for Linda, I'm going to switch to somebody else and give you a little bit of insights for yourself as well. And again, if you have not filled out the change grid yet and you'd like to, I'll chat over again, and I just did to everybody, the link to do this. It's free. It might take you all of 10 minutes to do it, but it's very eye-opening. And the system, by the way, immediately sends you your change grid, your results. I'm able to do a lot more sophisticated things on screen, and so that's what I'm going to do as I work my way through this. So, all right. So that's the basic. So Linda, comments, questions, thoughts about this? You need to unmute if you want to say anything. Yep.
Sounds right. That right on the nose.
Well, good. That gave me a chance to take a drink of water. Now, the thing about the change grid is you see all these different colored lines going all these different directions. Each one of those colors represents a different layer of the change grid. And if we look at these layers individually, we can get a lot of very useful insights into what's really going on. And so we'll go from looking at the composite change grid to instead looking at how you're responding to things right now. Now, the response states are all about the 5 levels of productive tension, and ultimately tension management is what this whole thing is about, becoming a better tension manager for yourself and as you work with others and in there. So I think it's really great that none of these activities have put you up in stress. When you're up in stress, you're in a situation you believe the challenge greatly exceeds your ability to handle that challenge. And so you respond with a very, well, even up to a fight or flight response. Any sort of a survival instinct can be kicked in up here. But up in stress, there's a lot of very, say, emotions that might be clouding your ability to see reality for what it is, et cetera. And so I won't go deeper into that because none of these activities put you up in stress. Activity number 12 puts you on the border between power stress and stress. And activity number 1, hearing your authentic voice, is right there as a neighbor to what we're looking at. Let me again zoom in a little bit and see if I can help you guys see this a bit more. So what I'm about to say about these activities, just think of them as being a bit together, even though they're one point away from each other. Power stress is a bit healthier level of tension than stress. Power stress sounds like this. I know I need to do something. I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it right now. Are you going to help me or what? And so while there is this acknowledgement that something needs to be done around these, power stress acknowledges that you don't really have all of the resources in place to be able to do these as effectively as you would like to. And there is a feeling of a sense of urgency around it. Now, that's probably because you rated the importance so highly. For both of these activities, you rated the importance as, well, greater than a 9 in order for it to be read in color there. So these are very important tasks to you that you're reporting a high level of challenge, 9 and 10, but an ability of only 3 or 4. Now, if I was doing this as one of our regular coaching calls, I'd be saying to you, so how does that sound for you? Does that match what you're actually feeling? Tell me about that. And so, Linda, if you want, you're welcome to make any kind of comment as we go around doing this. But when we're doing an actual grid reading for 12 activities, it probably takes an hour. At least an hour to really work your way through it. And depending how interesting some of the plottings may be, it could take longer than that. So, today we're just wanting to give you guys a kind of a feel for what's going on. So now power stress again has this sense of urgency. So I would love to know, why do you have a sense of urgency around hearing your authentic voice? Now, if you guys are using this for your own self kind of coaching, this is a time for you to stop and just pause for a moment and go, that's an interesting question. Why am I feeling what I'm feeling about that activity? Why is it as important to me as I'm saying it's important to me? And by the way, looking at some of these other activities, is it important to me because I truly believe it's important to me, or because everyone tells me it should be important to me? So is it your authentic truth, or is it somebody else's what to say, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors imposing themselves on your reality, being projected or presented as an opinion or a suggestion or whatever? So we have a lot we'd want to get into there to find out about why they are located where they're located. I also be very curious to know how you came to decide that your ability was only a 3 when it came to living a life that feels right. So what is it that in the world of ability that you feel is missing, or needs to be expanded upon, worked upon, further developed, etc.? So Linda,
No,
you're
I
unmuted.
never
You're welcome to say.
I never thought about these questions before. So when I did, I thought, yeah, these are very important things. And I've never thought about them before. So I really don't have the knowledge, skill, and experience yet to go forward.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And so does this kind of resonate with what you're actually thinking and feeling?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go down now to, oh, by the way, number 12, because it's on the border between power stress and stress, you should know that that activity, even though it seems horizontally, it's on the same line, it actually carries more tension than activity number 1 does. But activity number 1, because it's further out grid, carries more drive. So you're more likely to work on number 1 than you are about number 2 or number 12, but number 12 bothers you more than number 1 does. For those who are on the call who are certified ChangeWorks professionals, if you want to unmute and add something that you see, please do so. So T, I just saw that you unmuted there. Something you want to throw in?
T, I was going to ask Linda, do you ever meditate?
No.
It seems like it may be more analytical effort that would help you out with number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've thought about meditation just since we've done this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And T, did you want to add something to it?
Yeah, the other thing besides meditation, I think some exercises, like Tai Chi and other things help you get back in tune to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it relieves stress. So that's a thought, adding on to what David said about getting back in touch with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did do Tai Chi for 5 years. And then at the beginning of COVID on March 13th, 2020, they closed the school.
Yeah.
So,
And that was the day.
That's when I gave up my exercise routine too.
Yeah. So I've gone into different areas of exercise, but you're right. The Tai Chi was very meditative, very, very meditative. I'd walk out of there thinking I had just meditated, even though I hadn't. I was doing all the Tai Chi moves.
Well, and that's the meditation in motion. So I know on some of the calls we've had for the Circle of Brilliance, we've been talking about the different ways that meditation can take shape. And so I know even if I'm out in the garden and I have this kind of meditation mode I go into when I am removing pieces of mulch off the rocks and putting it back where the mulch goes. And I do this one little piece at a time. So it's a very monotonous task, but it takes its own form of occupying yourself physically so that your mind can go and do whatever your mind needs or wants to do at that particular moment. So I think that's all really good. And by the way, for those of you who want to know where the meditation suggestion came from, keep in mind that when you're on the edge of stress, some things happen to your ability to detect resources around you, et cetera. And so the further upgrade you place, the less accurate you become in seeing and reporting your ability to do something. So because you can't see what the resources you have are all around you. You could be surrounded by all the knowledge, all the skill, all the experience, but because of your level of tension kind of distorting reality, you kind of lose that ability, which means you're actually under-reporting your ability. Well, as both David and T have said, if you can just take a few moments to just separate yourself physically, emotionally, intellectually from what's going on in the world around you, take that moment of meditation, you may calm out of stress enough or move down grid further enough so that now your mind is being reminded, oh, that's right, I have this and I've done this and I've done this. I'll say one more thing and then I'd like both Brian and T to comment on this, is that the other thing that's happening up here is you reported the challenge of doing that as a 9 or a 10. Keep in mind that a 12 is reserved for truly, life and death situations. And so I kind of feel that this high of a rating feels to me as though it's an over, what do I say? It's an over endowment of tension to these activities. They certainly shouldn't be that challenging. And so because as tension goes up, distortions occur, you may also be over perceiving the challenge that's involved with something. So as part of the coaching that we do with our clients, and we want you guys to do with yourselves, if you're going to be developing your Oracle of the Self skill set, when you're noticing yourself plotting upgrade, you do want to pause for a moment and go, all right, is that really a logical, truthful, legit kind of an assessment? Or were my emotions, my distortions, my deletions, my generalizations, was that what was actually becoming the voice in my head when I answered it? Remember, go back to the very first lesson we did in Oracle of the Self. Your head is filled with voices. Depending on where you are on the ChangeGrid, different voices are given the microphone, if you will. And so upgrade, those voices are far more likely to be voices you've heard from others in the past, or voices that come out of warnings that you've given to others or heard from others or read about or whatever the case may be. We got to find our own true voice, because our own true voice is the one that knows what's really going on. So we have to make sure that we are putting ourselves in a situation where that voice can speak. So whether that's meditation, mindfulness, etc., that's where we're going. Okay, both Brian and T, you both have unmuted. So Brian, something you want to throw in?
Yeah, I was going to ask Miss Linda about gardening, because I'm thinking like up there in power, stress, the gravity of the moment is calling for like a centering or a groundedness. That's sort of like what David and T was talking about. Those kinds of activities certainly get you grounded to the perspective that you can hear that authentic voice. I was always told like the authentic voice is a still small voice. So you have to get, you can't have a crowded mind per se and be overwhelmed by emotions to hear it. And so like for myself, it's the martial arts. And so I do micro workouts throughout the day as a centering to just get back grounded. That's my mental gym, as I call it.
Very good. Very good. And
Yes.
again,
So
these
do you
are
know what you guys are doing?
talking you into going back to your Tai
No,
Chi.
you've all given me downgrade maneuvers.
Right. And for those of you who are new to ChangeWorks intention management, all these terms that you might be hearing the group bounce around, they know it because they've gone through the training or they've been around for a good long while working with us, and so there's all that. But yeah, downgrade maneuvers are anything that you do to lower your level of tension. And when we're doing our coaching work, of course, our goal is to help whoever's grid we're looking at understand where they're at and validate that where they're at is a real match. And if it isn't a real match, then where are they really on the change grid? And then we look at, as David pointed out earlier on, where's the ideal location? And then how are we going to help you move there? Well, how we help you move there are called change grid maneuvers, and they can be used to move you down grid or in grid or out grid or up grid or to the center of the grid. So there's different sets of maneuvers that you'll all be learning. But you are absolutely right, Linda. They're all giving you down grid maneuvers to help move you out of this area of the change grid where you may be distorting your reality. And again, life is all about how we perceive things to be. Reality is overrated, and how about difficult to actually define? So we will all operate out of our perceptions of what reality is. And unfortunately, the further upgrade we go, the further in any direction we go, the more likely we are to have that reality distorted. And if we end up making decisions and taking actions from a mindset of a distorted reality, the chances of those decisions and those actions being in our best interest is, diminished at the very least. Downgrade maneuvers. Let's see, Linda, we got 3 more minutes for you. And so then I'm going to look at someone else's. I just want to talk briefly about this pile of activities that we see plotting in power. Power is a balanced level of tension. It occurs when you see that your level of ability and the level of challenge are in a reasonable good range of one another. So it doesn't have to be perfect, like 6-6 right here in the middle. This is a 6-7. That these are all activities where there is a balanced kind of a perception reasonably. What happens when you're in power is that your logical faculties come to the forefront. So when you're in power, your mind is far more tuned into the facts and the figures than it is into the emotions and the whatever else is happening up grid or too far out grid, down grid, or in grid. And so this is where you really are employing your mind more effectively. And in fact, I don't want to throw too much confusion into all this, but I want to just briefly change the background image so I can say something else about yours. I'd like to go to the engagement rings. And the layer of the change grid that divides it into these blue semicircles, this is the level of engagement you have about doing it. And so I can see that for a great many of the activities that Linda has plotted here, she is plotting in awareness. She is now aware of these things, not hyper-aware. Hyper-aware is when something is in your face and is totally inescapable. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and smell smoke, you're going to become hyper-aware that you're smelling smoke. And that's going to trigger, as we said, how stress responses can serve you well. So they heighten your physical abilities. They heighten your auditory acuity and visual acuity, because you could be in a life or death situation. And so these are truly when your survival instincts are being kicked into gear, your primal way of dealing with things are being summoned forward, and you're hyper aware. Well, Linda's not hyper aware about any of these particular activities. Neither is she hypo aware, which is kind of sleeping on the job. It's flying so far under the radar, it's really not even airborne anymore. She is in full awareness. She knows about these things now. They are on her mind, but they're sitting there. Keep in mind that in order to move from awareness to getting something into action and done, we have to move from awareness to intention. You have to take whatever you're now aware of and say, now that I know that, now that I'm aware of that, what am I going to do with that insight, with that information? And you are then, the next thing that happens conversationally, even if it's just in your own head, is that you formulate some sort of an intention. I'm going to learn what I need to know. I'm going to go and do a little bit of Tai Chi. I'm going to go and do whatever those maneuvers would be that would be appropriate for all that. You have to formulate an intention to do something before you actually follow through and do it. Even if the time span between awareness and full execution is a matter of seconds, you still formed an intention. It just got formed so fast and got acted upon so fast that it really isn't up at your conscious level kind of awareness. But Linda has got some strong intentions about activities, but there's nothing really here that's in engagement. Now, technically, activity number 11 is in execution. Execution is a very strong expression of engagement. So we say engagement is when you're busy doing those things that lead you to the outcome you're looking for. And here, modern vernacular would say you're killing it. That's why it's execution. You're killing it. You're killing it. And what that is exiting relationships that don't allow me to be my authentic self. And I can tell you, Linda considers that to be a very important activity. She knows she's got the ability to do it. She gave it a 9. The challenge of doing it is a 10. So a test is a foot. So Linda knows that she has what it takes to be able to reduce or eliminate toxic relationships that aren't supporting her. And although it's not an easy thing to do, it's not impossible. So she'll actually put herself to do that. So that's when you say, whatever it is that needs to be done, I'm going to do it. This area of the ChangeGrid is also the home of Olympic athletic performance. So people that are out there going for the gold recognize that they have a strong ability to do it. They've had to learn what they need to learn. They've had plenty of proof along the way. They know they have the ability to do it, or they wouldn't be there. But they do not underestimate the challenge of coming home with a medal or coming home with the gold. They know who they're up against, and they know they can't become sloppy, and they can't take anything for granted. They know they have to be on top of it. Well, that same mindset would be what the grid is saying Linda has about exiting relationships that don't allow her to be her authentic self. So Linda does that. Oh, actually, T, you're unmuted. Something you want to chime in?
I'm not unmuted.
Oh, actually, yes, you are. That's okay. Not to worry. Fear thee not. Fear thee not. Okay, anywho, Linda, does this match for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. Well, there you are. So we could give you opportunity to tell us all sorts of stories about how you've done that, but that might.
Gee, look at the difference between number 2 and number 12 and 1.
So number 2, maintaining an open and honest relationship with myself. I'm glad you brought that one up. David, what is the insight you have about the relative placements of 2 versus 1 and 12?
I'm confused by it.
Oh, all right.
It looks 2 looks to be, affecting 1 and possibly affecting 12. So what that would say to me is that she feels really good about maintaining an open and honest relationship with herself, but she's not sure exactly who herself is yet.
All right, and that would hold true. Let me add 2 things to that. Right now, where Linda is plotting about maintaining an open, honest relationship with herself, she rated her ability as a 9 and the challenge as a 3. That means she perceives herself as having triple the ability the challenge at hand requires. She also considered it to be moderately important. That's why the number 2 is orange, and it's inside of a green circle, which tells me she also thinks it's a small task. Now, right there, even if you guys have not had much of any training in the world of tension management or orientation of the ChangeGrid, you should know something about that. Anyone who feels like they got 3 times the ability to do something, and it's not all that important, moderately so, but still it's not super important, and it's no big deal. Would you say that this is likely that Linda's either going to put energy into it or not so much?
Not so much.
Not so much, not so much, because she can count on it. See, keep in mind that mastery lives downgrid. So as we move further and further down the grid, mastery, this is where people have developed tremendous skill to do something, their knowledge, their ability, all that, it's very high. And so this is kind of on the back burner, maybe. In fact, let's go back to the levels of tension, and you can see what level of tension she's at when it comes to that one. So let's go to response states again. And there she is on the border between power apathy and apathy. Well, power apathy sounds like this. I know I need to do something. I just wish somebody else would do it. And apathy sounds like this. Do something. I don't need to do anything. Everything is just fine. So everything is all set. So power apathy and apathy are places where our greatest successes, our greatest skills, our greatest improvements, advancements, all that kind of stuff will ultimately move us on the change grid. As our perceived ability increases about a given activity, it is not at all unusual for the perceived challenge of that activity to come down unless something changes about the activity to keep the challenge high. Go back to my example about athletic sports performance. So that athlete who is gold medal quality, if they're just at home fooling around with their friends, they know they're downgraded when it comes to their sport because they're so good at it, so proven. There's no challenge if they're just playing whatever that sport is with their friends. On the other hand, if they know they're up against the second rated person in the whole sport, you got to believe they go, no, that's a very different level of challenge. And that's going to change what I'm saying to myself about myself when it comes to this particular activity. It is going to affect my my behavior because it's going to summon forth different values, different beliefs, different whatever. But as long as it stays down here, then probably the thing I want you guys to kind of lock in for this location is that apathy is the unavoidable side effect of mastery. I'll say that again. Apathy is the unavoidable side effect of mastery. No matter what the activity is you've done in your life, no matter how difficult it was the first time you did it, as you did it more and more and more often, your perceived level of ability went up, the perceived challenge went down, and you end up moving downgrid. Sooner or later, movement downgrid is going to put you into power apathy, where you assume everything is just fine as far as that activity is concerned. But ultimately, you'll end up down in apathy. And in apathy, what we're concerned about is an illusion of control. And so there's a lot of things going on here about the levels of productive tension as well. And then going back to the engagement rings, I'll also draw to your attention that Linda is now in awareness. And because of natural movement on the change grid is downgrade, she's going to actually have it move out of her awareness, under her awareness as time goes on. So now, again, as I said, apathy is the unavoidable side effect of mastery. So here's what you guys need to know and embrace and celebrate. You have countless things downgrid on the grand change grid that's in your head, because over the course of your lifetime, you have mastered countless things. And those things that you have mastered may be very difficult for other people to do, but for you, you go, no, I figured that out long ago. I can do that. I can do that. If nothing changes about that specific activity, you can continue to perform as you've performed, although you're going to stop paying a level of attention to it. Less and less attention is going to get paid to it. So sooner or later, you're going to end up in a different problem area. But nevertheless, what plotting downgrid represents, and this is worth writing down if you guys want to apply the change grid to your own lives, things that plot downgrid represent untapped potential. They represent missions that have not yet been pursued, visions that have not yet been had or shared. This is a place of tremendous potential. And the potential is being, well, I'm not going to say lost as much as it's just being set aside. And sooner or later, it's going to be lost just because I'm not going to remember where I put it. So I think it's just going to get pushed and pushed and pushed aside. When we're working with our large corporate clients, we say this to them all the time. The problem in your organization is not that you've got employees that are up in stress. It's that you've got employees who have mastered what they've been doing for so long, they're down in apathy. So they can keep going through the motions and they can keep doing whatever the bare minimum is. But we need skilled managers who know how to keep the level of engagement high. And the way we keep talented people engaged is by making sure they always have a challenge that puts their ability to the test, that keeps them in a growth kind of a mode, that keeps them engaged. And so thinking about this activity specifically for Linda, She's this far down. And by the way, look, all the rest of them, the other 11, all have quite the gap. So they're all in power or up, power and power stress. But this one activity down here on the brink between power apathy and apathy. Well, let's see what that means. And Linda, you're welcome to chime in.
Okay, so I think that that was a very astute observation by David. And I think I'm going to have to find a coach. Maybe he could help me figure out this puzzle now in my brain.
Mhm. Well, and that's the whole point. You know, obviously it's the oracle of the self. We'd like you guys to be able to have enough insights about tension management to self-apply it. But we
That
were
was
going
supposed to be a joke.
to- All right.
Not the part about learning about it, but the part about finding a wonderful coach to help me think about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because we're married. That's right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me just kind of finish this one little thing, and then so what Linda is saying by this plotting is that when it comes to maintaining an open and honest relationship with myself, I am there. I've been there for a long time. I'm really good at it. I'd be curious to know why the importance is only moderate, but it's something that she kind of takes as part and parcel of who she is and how she is. And so maybe it doesn't need a whole lot of attention. It's just an essential part of who she is. Now, going to David's observation, what that would make me wonder is whether or not the reason why activities number 1 and 12, hearing my authentic voice and living a life that feels right, are so far up grid is because Linda hasn't tapped into the strength that this down grid ability represents. So maybe if she applied her ability to have that open and honest relationship with herself, she would apply it to living a life that feels right. So what is this? Why is your ability low? Why is the challenge high? What is the gap between how you're currently living your life and living the life that feels right? So, and that's where this ability right here to have that open and honest conversation with yourself can be leveraged as a way of helping these upgrade challenges. We often say that the remedy for what ails you upgrade can very often be found in the untapped potential of the things that are further downgrid. And keep in mind, the reason why these things end up becoming untapped is because they move to the back burner of our mind. We take them for granted. They don't demand any attention, so they don't get any attention. And so we forget that we have them. We don't forget that we have them because we're distracted by things that are upgrid. We forget that we have them because, well, we've just had them for so long. It's just, we just take it for granted. What do you, I don't even know where'd I leave that? You know, I've had it forever. Okay, so Linda, that's a little bit of insight into your ChangeGrid. So there you go. Anyone have some final comments for Linda's ChangeGrid or questions about Linda's ChangeGrid?
T, I've got a question.
Yes,
With regards to 1 and 12, is it accurate to say that those are aspects that might be influenced by externalities outside of Linda herself?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And remember, when we talk back to the chorus of the mind, the whole reason why we feel that people need to reconnect with the oracle of their self is because their minds are being inundated with messaging at all times, you know, day and night, whether it's social media, friends you're talking to, whatever, something you're reading. Our minds are constantly being I don't want to say, I'll just say this. They're constantly receiving messages all around us. That ends up creating what we call the chorus of the mind. The chorus of the mind is not only your voice, but the voice of all of these other people who have influenced you recently or long ago. It's just all these, and those voices, by the way, get in arguments with one another. They're not necessarily in agreement with one another. And at a certain point in time, you go like, wait, are they even me? Or did they just infiltrate my brain and I don't know how they got there and I kind of want to get rid of them, you know? So you're absolutely right that these are things that could very much be impacted by what's going on outside of Linda. So maybe living a life that feels right is an issue because something she heard long ago that said what living a right life looked like and felt like wasn't accurate to begin with, or it was that person's idea of what a life that felt right to them would be. So this is why we get into this idea about having an open and honest relationship with yourself. Allows you to pause and say, well, where did that message come from? What are these messages that are going with my authentic voice? Why is it so challenging? What are these voices saying and doing? How do I shed them? And obviously that's what the program is really all about. But awareness is the first step on the road to recovery. So did that help, Boris, or did I?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Chris, you've also unmuted. Something you want to throw in?
Yeah, I find it to be interesting, number 4.
All right.
I just seem to have a feeling like everything is hinging on number 4, like a domino effect, because until it's like the idea that you often share about an unanswered question. So it
Mhm.
seems like until we answer the question of what you truly value and what you truly believe, that it will hinder the progress of everything else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Now, the thing about, we put these activities together and put them in this order for a reason. And that is because one should shake out problems with others. And then there's some that are there to kind of validate what's really going on in others. But this idea about taking inventory of values and beliefs, how can I take an inventory of my values and beliefs when I'm not even sure I can hear my authentic voice? Right? So what
Mhm.
are these really my authentic values and beliefs? Because I can't take inventory of them if I can't recognize them. I need to be able to label them, extract them. One way or another, I have to be able to draw attention to them. So it's almost like 1 has to be done before 4 can be done effectively. That being said, 4 could be done much more effectively if we understood what a life that feels right means for Linda. And by the way, Linda, we're talking to you like you're not here. So obviously, this is what happens when you get a bunch of coaches on a call together. So, yeah. All right. Okay. So Chris, did that resonate?
Yes.
Did that match? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And again, keep in mind that that taking an inventory is, I'll change the background image for just a second. Let's go up here to energies. The energy that will do the best job of activity number 4 is an analytical driver. So we need someone who wants to do something. There has to be a drive behind it, taking inventory of the values and beliefs I currently project. But there's definitely an analytical element going on here, because I said the values you're projecting. That would mean you would either have to be aware enough when you are projecting an attitude or a belief, a value, or someone would need to clue you in to the values and beliefs and attitudes, et cetera, that you're projecting. So awareness is it. And right now, again, if I go back to the engagement rings, Linda is plotting pre-aware. So this hasn't even really stepped into full awareness yet. These 2 bands are obviously all about awareness. And so this is something that's very much now coming to her thoughts. And interestingly enough, Lynn and I have been chatting about this kind of thing. Where did that come from? We'll say something that we believe is true. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? How did I learn that? From who? Why do I believe they were right? And it even applies, by the way, to things as mundane for most as gardening. So if I said to somebody, at what time of year should you prune a lantana in Arizona? You would think someone would be able to say this, here. No, you will find different people who have different opinions that will say different things about the whole thing. So which one became our belief? Or how did that happen? And is that the one we should really believe? Why were we convinced by that voice? So there is this kind of very much an analytical exercise that one goes through in order to take inventory of something. And so one of the things that we would be doing, if you guys were taking a journey experience or something like that, we would actually figure out what are those activities? What does that really mean? What does that inventory look like? And turn it into something that you could then do as a practice. Okay, so other final comments, thoughts about Linda's grid before we take a quick look at another one? Oh, we only have 10 minutes left. I guess next week someone's getting another deep read. So yeah. Anything else you guys want to know about this one?
I just think that when this is T, when she takes it again, that 2 will move up and 12 and 1, because I think it is all about awareness and understanding, because Linda said earlier, I wasn't aware of some of this. And so she believes she's living the right life that she wants. But now she's becoming more aware of really what authentic, of what that means to number 2.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, how often do we really stop and take inventory of all those
Right.
pieces? You know?
Yeah, that's what I was going to add. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting back into practice for that.
Yeah.
Like I do an annual review at the end of the year. One of the things I did for this year, particularly, I call them anti-goals. So things that I don't want to spend energy on any longer that may have been values and beliefs in the past.
Interesting.
You know, and you know, Carl Jung will call this looking. He always talks about this idea of an afternoon of life, and says you can't live the afternoon of life with the same programming of the morning. And he didn't coin an age, but typically it's like after, you know, your 50s and 60s and that kind of thing, you tend to look at life a little bit differently. So some of the things that were once important are no longer that important, and vice versa. It kind of shifts and changes with the different stages of life.
Yes. Yeah, and even that's why we divide our Oracle, the self program, into the 4 seasons, because the kinds of things that you should be working on this time of year are different than the ones you would be doing in spring or summer. And I'm talking about in the what was it, the field of your mind, you know. When do you regroup? When do you let things settle? When you know, cocoon a little bit? And of course, that's very difficult in the good old days. If you think about this, go back to the mid 1800s. Assume for a moment you weren't living in an urban setting. Once the winter started coming into the Midwestern states or whatever, in all likelihood, you would not leave your home or leave your property, your farm or whatever, until the spring comes. No one's plowing the roads. Right? And so you would have had to stock up all of the feed your animals would need, everything your family would need. You didn't have any mail being delivered. You didn't have any news coming in. You didn't have a social media. Certainly forget about that. You didn't have friends that you would see. So back then, we're talking about 150 years ago, whatever, you were not being bombarded with messages. If anything, probably the greatest source of messaging you were getting were coming from the people you interacted with in your town or village, and when you went to church on Sundays. So that might be where some of the messages were coming from. But today, can you imagine when we got stuck for you know, during the whole shutdown? We didn't lose any messaging opportunities. We just got more of them, and we got them faster and faster. And so I do sometimes wonder if part of the reason why we've lost track of our inner voice is because so many more voices have been able to enter our mind simply because of the time of technology that we're in right now. What do you guys think about that? Yeah.
I would say absolutely. I think that's, for the most part, the autonomy, self-decision, or you know, decision making, those kinds of things have been automated by algorithms. And I just met a guy who wrote a book about human algorithms. And so this idea of Oracle of Self, you get to take a look at these human algorithms that are, you know, prompting your own decision making. I think that's a quite powerful thing.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential, and it's just an interesting exercise that the next time you hear yourself saying something as being true, just pause for a minute and go like, where did that come from? How did I reach that? You know, is someone else in my head? Did someone buy that part of my brain? You know, what's really going on? Where is the true you? And because we didn't realize we lost it over time, I don't know that anyone's actually training people to find their own voice. You see lots of things written about it, and obviously people, you know, certain communities that are focused on self-development and things like that might be doing the kind of work, but the average person, I don't think gives it any real thought. So yeah, until something goes wrong, and obviously that's why those of us on the call that are human development professionals have had the blessing of the career. So. All right. So again, well, we're pretty much at the top of our time. I want to chat over to everybody one more time, the link to take the profile. I really, really need you to take this. You will immediately receive your ChangeGrid. If you review what we've talked about today, you should be able to take a look at your own ChangeGrid and start getting some insights about which activities you plotted where. But I'm going to be looking for 2 people for next time around, and several have already volunteered, but if you want to volunteer, you feel free, and I'd be more than happy to read your ChangeGrid as well. So with that, any final comments, questions?
Good session, T.
All right. Thanks so much,
Thank you,
everybody.
T. That was a
Thank
very,
you.
very nice
Thank
debrief.
you.
Glad you enjoyed it. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye for
Have a
now.
good day.
Bye.
you.
Bye.